oh look, we are back! Welcome back! Because you've gone so far, and I clearly have moved so much, and changed my shirt. Okay, so we're going to talk about some ethics. And I like to talk about the research ethics piece because I think it's really important, and I know you get this in a lot of classes, but wouldn't you be a little horrified if no one talked about it? Okay, well that's my thoughts. So, ethical issues related to personality testing. It's really important to know how a test is going to be used. Because it is. Like, you should know what your data are being used for. So, for researchers, tests are often used to learn about people. But these tests are also used to help when you take tests for schools. School and career counselors use vocational interest tests to help you figure out what you like to do. I've taken some vocational interest, and my recommendations were either be a biostatistician, which I'm pretty impressed with, that's pretty close, or a history professor, which isn't far off, because I'm likely to teach a history of psych class eventually, probably after pandemic. So they can be accurate, but, they're not perfect. They didn't say I was going to be a quantitative psychologist who's interested in the of applying genetically informed designs to causal inference. Yeah, so it's not perfect. In addition, clinicians use these kinds of tests to help diagnose and, select treatments and evaluate if treatments are being effective, stuff like that. Now, kind of the more higher stakes one that there are more ethical issues about are assessments for selection or retention. So, standardized tests, or deciding if you get into the B school, or, go to med school, all those horrible, stressful, the things aren't horrible, but the stress is. Employers, the CIA does this. They use personality tests to, assess agents and things like that. Employers use integrity tests. Often, they're related to traits that predict job performance. In theory, they're less likely to discriminate by using personality tests against women, minorities, and other groups. Unfortunately, the reality is most of the tests they use, because they're not predictive, it's kind of random noise, and so they are used to keep out people who aren't like them. So, there's tests that, color codes you. And so if it's a way for the employers and the hiring committees to be well, they didn't match the color we want, the literal color, not their skin tone. Although sometimes that's essentially the implication. They didn't get the red color. They got blue. But if they like the candidate, they'll be oh, this test is stupid. Let's hire them anyway. But if they're on the fence or want an excuse to be well, they didn't match our personality profile, so we don't have to take them. Hence, I cover some of the ethics and stuff. So, types of personality. I just talked about this. So, potential problems. There's a lot of issues with interest tests. Fields may not evolve, so if you use known groups, if you use tests that were developed in the 40s for vocational interest, or anything that reflects what is not traditional and classic for a field, can screen out people who aren't the classic version. So it can be difficult for women or minorities to join non-traditional fields. It used to be that they had gender forms in the strong vocational inventory. And so, there were just some vocations that there wasn't a woman version of, doctor, if I'm recalling correctly. I know that there were women forms that the men didn't have options of, secretary or childcare. Yeah. We've improved. ONET has a great one, sponsored by the U.S. Department of Labor, and it's pretty good with matching vocations. Next, integrity tests. These can be different, and I hinted at this, I think, earlier. This is allegedly an example. I have not been able to confirm this. This is an example of an integrity test from a McDonald's job application. You are approached by a group of young kids while you're relaxing in the park. They want you to join them in a game of soccer. What are you likely to do? And you fill this out when you fill out your job application. I should ask my sister. She worked at McDonald's for a long time. Oh, I got a lot of sisters. The youngest one, the one that's in college, the one that's reminding me that you're all are people. So here are the 4 options. Apologize and explain that you don't have time to play with them. Okay, employer's probably going to like that because you're honest and like you're focused on work, which employers tend to like. You join for a couple of minutes just to make them happy. That might suggest you're a people pleaser. You join in with them as you really enjoy playing with kids. If you're in a child care type job, which is not what McDonald's is, like that one, it doesn't seem to hurt your application. The only question here that do not select this one, even if it's true, because it's not what employers want to see on these stupid tests. Ignore them or tell them to go away. Now, I realize that I've just recorded myself and you've just watched a recording of me telling you to lie on your job application. That's not exactly what I mean. I'm not don't lie, please. Okay, don't do it. It's bad. Bad lying, okay? From a pragmatic standpoint, hypothetically, if your goal is to get a job and you know this test is stupid and not actually helpful in screening, because it's not, then I would recommend asking yourself for each employment question which of these questions would be bad to check for the employer. And here, I imagine that the screening criteria is they will not consider applications who click the ignore them or tell them to go away, even though that's what a lot of people will do. I would ignore them because I don't want to play soccer with kids because I was relaxing. I don't want exercise. That's like the opposite of relaxing. But you don't check that box, hypothetically speaking. Okay? Because that makes you look like an antisocial person to an employer who, in most cases, is trying to filter through jobs. So, you get different dilemmas for honest people and dishonest people. So, dishonest people, okay, you check the box you know that you need to get the job, to not get screened out. Or, you're honest, you have a dilemma. So, honest people have to decide whether to lie about minor things to get a high score. While dishonest people do not have this dilemma because they will lie. So, you end up with this bizarre scenario where the highest scoring integrity people are actually those with the least amount of integrity. Yeah. So, given that the goal of the test is to measure how honest you are, and the test is fundamentally flawed, I think you know where I stand on this. Alright, so there are a lot of criticisms that are posed by testing. So the book honestly doesn't put a ton of effort into these criticisms because they're very pro-test. They're in favor of testing. I am also a major favor of testing as well. However, there are certain limitations. You can't just deny these because it makes your argument less compelling. There are serious limitations to testing, and also a broad definition of what testing and assessment are. People make the argument that they are unfair mechanisms for controlling people. It's true. They can be abused to do this. China's social credit system, just like how Facebook mines all your data, that's an assessment. That's behavioral data. What Chinese government does, according to some of the translations I've read, and just talking with people who have talked to people who work with this, I don't have any direct connections, is a way to quantify economic and social reputation. It's literally like a credit score, but for how well you follow the government rules and are a good citizen. They use behavioral and life outcome type data like debts, peer reputation, government records. It's in the pilot stage, kind of. And there's a really great video. I'll link to it below. No, I'm sorry, I'm not going to link to it in the comments below. I'm going to put it in the class module as an optional thing. But it can be misused. Thankfully, at least I have the luxury of saying that I know my data is, most people don't know how to use this data, the Chinese system. Oh God, it's very good. It's unfortunate. I'm happy to talk more about how the system seems to work, what stuff's involved, ways to kind of protect some of your data, not all of it. For our international students, this might be extra helpful. Chinese government, I'm totally not doing this. We as best as friends, yeah.